Hey, 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 I'm getting a boat. I missed y'all last week, but I am back and ready to rumble. I have my comrades with me. Comrade! For this fine episode of JJK.
Y'all, this episode was so insane. It was so good. I don't want to take up too much time with my intro because I feel like there's just so much to talk about. So let's jump in.
Ditto.
Yeah, so since I wasn't here last week, I just want to say JJK has been looking like a movie lately. Like, this is no longer a TV show, this is a film. It's a masterpiece. So, our episode opens, and we see Yuji in a hospital, who we can infer that his grandpa is talking to. We then flash to Sukuna in his body. And how did this set up the episode for you in contrast to kind of just staying in Shibuya and continuing our storyline?
I mean, I think it set up the episode well for what was going to happen. This whole time I've been kind of thinking about like how long it was going to be before Yuji could take over his body again and just what kind of mass destruction he was going to find. So, you know, his grandpa saying like, you are strong, use that to save people. And then they go straight to Sukuna just like standing there, like surrounded by just destruction. I was like, oh God, this is not going to go well. So the episode definitely set up well for making a nice little loop at the end, which we'll talk about soon.
I really liked that they flashed back to this moment because I think it's so important in setting up like Yuji's goals and his personality. And the joke I feel like that's been running around on the internet this week is like, oh, Sukuna is just Yuji with lines on his body and face. And it's like, no, like not only do they physically look similar, but like really they do look like different people. They could not be more different, like at their core, right? This is like a genocide of the people that are in Shibuya, and ultimately like it's Yuji's body and he is at least semi-conscious for this. So knowing that like he had the full intent and like we got season 1, which is like so much more, it has its dark moments, but I feel like overall the tone is like much more bubbly and like colorful and bright and hopeful than season 2 has been so far. But Yuji has kind of been our sunshine boy for most of this, even in the fight with Choso. Like, he still was, like, pretty simple-minded and, like, optimistic, and now I think this is, like, really upping the stakes for him in a very serious way. So this is, like, a really interesting and dark way to start the episode. Also, notably, not using the song. Not at this moment, anyway.
Oh, we'll talk about that in a minute. Don't you worry. So, we quickly pan over to Megami, who's barely alive, but has that motherfucker Haruta on his tail. He seems to be almost rambling about the subjugations, yet we haven't seen Megami stall a fight like this, and he seemed to be even closer to death than he seemed in season 1. What did you guys think of this scene when you first saw it?
So for me, this was really exciting, but I admittedly am a manga reader, so I knew what was coming and I knew it was going to be insane. And so I just had a lot of anticipation concerning like how they were going to pull this off, because Tom mentioned in last week's episode, this is almost like the Attack on Titan fight at this point. Like how are they even going to animate this and make this look? So I think it was like the build up of like something's coming. And also even as an anime only watcher, like we saw the glimpse of this is like before the last moment that we saw in the last episode. This precedes that. And I feel like if we take our context clues, like we know that he's going to summon something, and we know that he has like several Shikigami, and I think that we've understood in theory that they have different power levels. We've only seen a handful. Like the main ones that come to mind is like we've seen obviously the dogs, and we've seen him use like the rabbit escape and the hares a couple of times now in this season, but they're not necessarily like super intimidating. The dogs would be the scarier of the two, and I might be missing another that we've seen, but I think we understand from the cliffhanger we got that this is something that's on a different level, and he's like almost villain monologuing about this right now. It's interesting to like explain what you're going to do, but Haruto would have like no idea what he's even talking about probably, because this is like this technique and what he's about to pull out is something that's almost like mythical. So if he knows anything about it, it's probably almost along the lines of like, oh, this is a story. This is like a fairy tale. Like that thing you're saying that you're going to do doesn't even exist. And honestly, I don't think he even knows. Eagerness, maybe that's the word I would use to sum up like how I was feeling in this exact moment, and dread as a manga reader also. So
it kind of made sense. So it did help me kind of understand what was going on at the end of last episode with like clearly there was some kind of monster or something, you know, at the end there when Haruto was like, "Wake up, you sorcerer!" Like, and Megumi's just like there. I'm like, excuse me. May I remind everyone that Megumi's my favorite character? And I don't like this at all, seeing him laying there like pretty much dead, you know, like that doesn't really make me feel happy, even though I'm sitting here smiling, but that's like a sarcastic smile. For those
But you
who
said
are
watching your favorite characters die was your favorite thing to do.
not
I don't
actually
remember
that. Okay, so Emily wasn't in the car for this conversation, but I did tell Bryan, Johnny, and Jenna on the way back from the Demon Slayer premiere that I do like it when my favorite characters get close to death. It's like a weird, morbid thing that I literally growing up, who are my favorite Disney princesses? Sleeping Beauty and Snow White. There's something wrong inside my head. Anyway, now everyone on the pod that listens to the podcast knows, but I'm sitting here because my favorite character in this situation is not like technically a main character. I think Megumi is considered a bit more of a supporting character. You would say like Yuji is the main character. So I'm sitting here more like, oh God, like he's dead. And that doesn't make me very happy because I'm okay with them being close to it, but not actually dying. So, you know, there's that. But I'm stressed. I'm stressed and I'm confused because I'll be real with y'all. The first time I watched this and still to this point, I'm like, I don't know exactly what he's going on about. Subjugations is not a word that we commonly use. So I was like Googling what subjugation means because I'm like, what the heck? I don't get it. But I'm stressed. And I'm going to end there because this is a ramble.
All right. Well, in a minute, I'll explain and I'll kind of go through it just as make sure we all understand what we're talking about here. After the little monologue, we get to pan to a younger Satoru and Megumi talking about the real problem between the Gojo and Fushiguro clan. Did you enjoy this little piece of backstory, and how did it characterize the relationship between Megumi and Satoru, knowing that the tensions between those clans were tight?
I really enjoyed this because, first of all, I did like to see a little bit of the relationship between, not Geto, Gojo and Megumi. And I thought it was also very interesting to hear about the fact that, you know, the Gojo and the Zenin clan were they don't like each other because at one point the two of them got so heated that they both died. But also, I think what really caught my eye about this flashback was that Gojo mentions that the member of the clan that was fighting this member of the Zenin clan, which he couldn't even remember which like period this happened. He mentioned Edo, which we know from Demon Slayer was like a really long time ago because it was quite a bit before the Taisho era, which was back 100 years ago for us now. So he mentioned that the member of the Gojo clan had the same powers as him, which we've seen. He's been pretty much untouchable. Like, yeah, he was put in the prison realm, but all these characters that we see are really, really strong still couldn't hold a candle to him. But that member of the Gojo clan died in this fight against the member of the Zenin clan that was using the same technique as Megumi. So to me, as you know, we go back a couple episodes, Toji went straight for Megumi when it was established that he was like just kind of targeting whoever was strongest in the room. When Nanami was there, Maki was there, Grandpa Zenin was there. And it just kind of builds on this fact that I think Megumi is so freaking strong. And there's more calls to this, which we'll talk about probably later in this episode. And that's what really caught my eye, is that a member of the Zenin clan that had the same technique as Megumi was able, even though they died at the same time, they were able to kill someone with the current Satoru's power, which is just so insane to me and really shows what Megumi is capable if he freaking survives this.
Yeah. Megumi's downfall here is just that he's young and doesn't have a ton of training or experience or mastery necessarily of this skill, and I think he's aware of that. And what he's explaining, like even in the discussion that we just had about like he's like monologuing, he's kind of going through like these Shikigami are like tiered. and I don't remember the exact leveling, but let's say the rabbits are like number 1, the dogs are like maybe number 4 or something like that. The higher you get in these numbers, like the stronger the power is. But it takes a long time to master. Not everyone's able to do, even people that wield like this technique are not able to. Very, very few people are. And so to be able to master all 10 or the full extent of the shadow technique, knowing that power is strong enough to beat Gojo. Gojo being like the strongest of the strongest people. It's like maybe that is the only thing that could beat Gojo. And so that means like with somebody at their full power from the Zenin clan, you have somebody that's like equally as scary, but the conditions have to be exactly right. And I think that's interesting too, because like Toji is his dad. And I know Toji's not in this episode, but there's like a really interesting dynamic of how Gojo came to like stand in this sort of like step parent role or like adoptive parent role for Megumi. And yet I don't get the impression that he was like trying to use him. It seems like he's like trying to help foster the technique and the power as an adoptive sort of parent. And that actually if he had gone to his blood family with the Zenin clan, which was not what Toji wanted, that he would have probably been used in a bad way for this technique, because clearly it's very, very powerful and not everyone from the clan wields it. It seems like it's actually kind of a once in a lifetime thing and very rare. So I think it's going to be pretty damn horrifying. Honestly, if it can go toe to toe with Gojo, it's probably pretty bad or good, depending on the wielder.
Bum, bum, ba. Yeah, I thought that it was really interesting, and I like that they kind of talked about this backstory. But we get to see what he was stalling for the entire time. He summons a new Shikigami, Mahoraga, the ultimate Shikigami. It's said that no one in history has ever tamed him. Why do you think Megumi did this?
Honestly, why did he do it? I think that he was a little bit young and stupid, to be honest. He's like, I need to pull an ace out of nowhere. And he even says here, like, even if it means that I'm gonna die. Like what's happening right now in Shibuya is so crazy, but like maybe there's a chance I survive. And I'm willing to put like that 1% chance. Or like even if I don't live, like if it'll save everybody else, I'm willing to risk it. He'd never summoned this before. I don't think he really understood what it was. And also, can we talk about like the pronunciation of this too? Because I was like shooketh when I heard that, because I've always heard it pronounced Mahoraga, and I don't think that that's incorrect because it is like a Buddhist term, but the way that they pronounced it in Japanese was something more like Mahorka. That's cool. I think apparently it's like an abbreviation or something like that, but it's also like just as official and it means the same thing. But that and like the malevolent kitchen thing, which we'll talk about in a minute. I was just like, what? Because I was like all excited to hear how they were going to say it. And then it was like, it sounded like a completely different word. I'm going to continue to say Mahoraga for now. Please don't roast me in the comments. I just think it sounds scarier. I don't know.
It does.
In my opinion.
That's the subtitle that we got. Like it said Mahoraga to us.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it says in the manga too. Like and that's how I've heard it pronounced in like videos. Like, I don't know. I guess Mahorka is like also correct. So Mahoraga. Yeah, no one in history has ever tamed this thing. And we can see immediately that this does not go well. We see like Haruta's reaction. And I don't know if it was like recognition of exactly what Mahoraga was, because you can imagine he's probably only been summoned once in a lifetime for people that even have this technique. I think he probably was just recognizing like the sheer power of whatever he was up against. And also that Megumi like dragged him into like the summoning ritual was pretty funny and savage too. So it's like, oh, like, guess what, bitch? I might die, but you're going with me. He's like, no.
There's honestly a D&D spell that goes like that. It's called Hellish Rebuke. It's whenever you take damage, you send that damage back at them. And I was just like, that is all I could think of the other time, because you just like stand there and point at someone, and I'm just like, that's literally what he fucking did. He was like, I got you.
Got his ass. But like, he really should have just let Nanami kill him, because at least that would have been hot. So.
All right,
and I said what I said.
That's hot.
All right, I'll stop there.
I can think of a moment in Demon Slayer with the same thing where someone like kind of wants to take down someone but is willing to go down with them, but I'm not going to say because spoilers from manga. But okay, a lot.
Kamaboko, I'm gonna take you down. That's not a spoiler, Hannah.
That's not my name. It's Tanjiro Kamado. Who are you talking to? You, of course. Okay. Anyway. There's a lot to unpack here. So first things first, and I kind of read the situation a little bit differently, I think, than Emily. I think that at this point in time that Megumi is summoning this, he 100% like believes he's gonna die. I think the injury to the abdomen, he knew that Shoko could probably take care of that, but then once he got hit in the back, I think he started to get desperate because I think he knew he was losing too much blood, that he wasn't going to make it. I'll be honest, I didn't fully understand. I think I watched this scene where he's talking about like the subjugation and everything 4 times, and I think I might have a decent understanding of what it is, but essentially he's summoning a Shikigami that he does not have control over at all. And the way he summons it, and then he tells Haruta essentially like good luck, and then Mahoraga just completely like backhand knocks him against the wall, and that of course leads us to the scene that we were just talking about where it's like Megumi's just laying there like lifeless. They even make it a point to show him kind of like land and then slump as if like his body was like, all right, I'm done. I feel like Megumi summoned Mahoraga because he knew he was already going to die. He knew that Mahoraga would kill him, but he at least was going to take out Haruta with him, was kind of how I read the situation, because I think at this point he just knew he was too far gone, that his blood loss was too much and there was no chance of getting out there. So as long as he could take out this guy with him, he would be the victor in that situation, which we see in a lot of animes. And I call out Demon Slayer. I think most animes, there's probably at some point a character that's like, there's no way I'm making it out of here, so I'm gonna summon like my absolute trump card to at least take this person down with me. And that's what I read the situation as. As far as the name goes, I'm actually kind of interested to look into that a little bit as the Japanese language person. I want to hear what they say again, mostly because I don't know if there's some meaning behind the name being different than what we get. I've already noticed that a couple times, like the translation that they've given us, they've had to severely water down because they're using a very specific Japanese term when they're talking to each other that we want to understand as English speakers. So I kind of want to look into that and be like, is that name like some kind of Japanese, like specific, like only Japanese people would know the meaning of that name? Like Shingeki no Kyojin. That's the name of Attack on Titan. But when Eren said Shingeki no Kyojin in the show, all the Japanese fans went, oh my god, that's amazing! His Titan's the name of the show. Well, we were like, okay, the name of his Titan is close to the name of the show. So, again, I feel like I'm going on tangents here, but I'm interested to look into that. But I do think that Megumi did this, even though he knew that Mahoraga was uncontrollable, that he wouldn't be able to. I think he knew he was going to die. I think this was kind of his, like, if I'm going down, you're going down with me.
I'm going to jump in on the pronunciation real quick because I looked it up. I was too curious. So neither is wrong, apparently. I also said it wrong, so I apologize. It was Makora. It was not Mahorka. It was Makora, which is a shortening of Mahoraga, which is the Japanese pronunciation. But apparently Mahoraga is also correct because it is based on Buddhism. And so Mahoraga is Sanskrit. So neither is wrong.
Sanskrit. Okay.
So
cool.
Interesting.
You learn something new every day, folks. Even us Hashira learn something new. But all right.
But
So yeah, just to clear a couple things up about the subjugation. A subjugation is an instance in which a shadow user summons a shadow or a Shikigami in which they don't control. They do have to defeat the Shikigami in order to gain control of it. So that is how Megumi has so far gained control of the frogs, the dogs, the hares, Yamata no Orochi, rip, rest in peace, buddy, the snake that he had in season 1. The thing about the subjugation and him dying, and we saw Sukuna heal him immediately as soon as he showed up. So the thing about subjugation, which I don't think they explained in the anime, but they did go into detail about in the manga, which I'm surprised they didn't. The thing here is that because there's a subjugation currently active and there's more than one person alive from the subjugation, the death of Megami is suspended. So he can't die until the subjugation is fully completed. And
I think
therefore
Sukuna mentioned that. I think he did mention that Megami was like in a suspended state, like he wasn't actually dead because he used Haruta as part of it. And then he said like, it's a good thing I saved this trash by like he saved Haruta, because he then said that like he wants to use Megami because Megami is super strong. So he did mention like essentially if he hadn't saved Haruta and Haruta had died there, Megami would have also died there. Yeah, and what I got from that situation.
And that the only way it could be broken and like to save Megami, I feel like the way I just said that sound like, and kiss the princess and break the spell. But that kind of is what it is, though.
It's just not
like
Disney.
I have to. He's like, but instead of a kiss, he has to go in and he has to like take out Mahoraga.
Because it has to be someone that was not a part of the ritual, since Megami used Haruta. Okay, see? Okay, maybe I understand more than I thought. I did have to watch this 4 times, so, you know, there's that.
All right. Hey, now we're all on the same page. I can remember what I watched in the episode. That's good. But yeah, from here, it's an all-out brawl between Mahoraga and Sukuna, and it's wild. So let's just talk about that for a couple minutes, I guess, because that's most of the episode from here.
I think I first want to just mention, and I think it's important for us to address this as people who are creating content about anime and are active within, you know, this fandom, and also using kind of this form of media to create our own type of platform. But obviously, we've mentioned it a little bit, but there's been a lot going on with the animators at Studio Mappa. Many of them have been openly talking about the situation that they find themselves in, pretty much stating that their working environment is not good. We've kind of talked a lot about that. Mappa tends to be more of a like quantity over quality. They tend to just try to grab whatever's available to them, even if they don't really have the manpower for it, and just overwork them. And these animators mentioned that they were legitimately doing final editing the day of, and they even mentioned afterwards that they were embarrassed by the work that they put out. They thought that what was out there and what we got was actually not the finished product, and it was far from it. I would like to say, before I dive into how I felt about this, that like I think we as the Hashira Half Hour stand with these animators. We want them to, you know, stand up for themselves, and we want them to, you know, call for those better working environment. If that means that Jujutsu Kaisen takes a break, then I think that we are in full support of Jujutsu Kaisen taking a break. We would rather that these animators get time with their family and get time to finish these, rather than, you know, being forced into something that they're embarrassed to put out, as well as, you know, I heard that they were working 7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day, which is just actually insane. I just want to say that, you know, and you guys can jump in at any time, that we definitely stand with these animators and the hard work that they're putting into this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and you know, we've made like a little bit of a joke of saying like, thanks Mappa, like this whole time. When we say that, we are exclusively referring to these animators and to all of the actual workers that make the show possible. And if that means that we have to wait so that they can have a decent quality of life and like work-life balance, then we're going to get a better show at the end also. So like really, like it's a win-win situation all around, and we would really encourage the executive team to reconsider their policies, and we would fully support the animator's decision, whatever that might be.
I don't know if the SAG Guild is international or not. I would say realistically, I would rather have this show be something that is taken with pride and dignity, and I just don't feel forcing people to their wits' ends to create a product is ever worth it. You know, it's something that critically damaged me personally. So this is something that I relate to pretty heavily, and I think is kind of touching to me. So I'm sorry if I start to water from my eyes, if you will. but pushing people to the brink is never the answer. Like, these people literally go balls to the wall every week, putting out their best work that they can. And for them to be told, you know, it's not enough, you need to work faster, you need to be putting out more content, I need it better, I need it faster, and I need it done more quickly, I don't support that. I think that so far, every animator at MAPPA has done an amazing job. Anyone who has worked on JJK, Chainsaw Man, Attack on Titan has all done amazing work for me to be able to sit back in my nice cushy home and sitting on my cushy ass couch while doing nothing, watching anime, making my life better. If they can have a better lives as well, a better schedule, maybe getting to pick their kids up from school more often or whatever it is, like, they deserve that, because they have definitely made my life better. And I think it's, you know, I want to take a stand for them as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, SAG is not international, so the animators are not a part of the strike that happened. Although I think a lot of people are calling for them to do a strike to, you know, kind of replicate what happened here, for them to call for, you know, better work environment, better wages, that sort of thing. And I think we stand with them if they choose to do that, for sure. So, and with that in mind, I think that it's actually incredible to me if this episode was something that was not completely done, that they were editing the day of, what these animators are capable of. It still is hard for me to like say, oh my gosh, it was amazing, knowing the kind of work that they put in there. I almost feel bad, but also at the same time, I want to shout them out because of how amazing this was in under the circumstances. And I also want to call out the people in other fandoms that are trying to use this as a way to put down the animation of Jujutsu Kaisen. Please don't. Like, this goes way deeper than a stupid Twitter conversation about which anime is better, which animation is better, which fight scene is better. These animators, this is their livelihood, and we're seeing that they are putting more into this than they should have to. And for what the situation is, what they put out was actually mind-boggling to me, that this was unfinished, that this was being edited the same day. This fight scene was absolutely stunning, and it just, I think it goes to show the kind of heart that's being put into this show is real from these animators, and it was spectacular. Again, just like the episode before that and the episode before that. So it was really interesting to watch. I don't want to keep going. I have some other, you know, thoughts of the fight, but I think the fight was just really, really powerful, and I really want to just stick to complimenting the animators because I think that they deserve the compliments and that they deserve to be praised in the situation that they're in.
100%. What they managed to pull off with so little time is like absolutely nothing short of like a masterwork, in my opinion. However, like, with that in mind, we saw a statistic that I think was shared a little bit out of context on the internet, and it was like a quote to the effect of like, oh, what you saw was like only 30% of what could have been. And I think a lot of people interpreted that as like the episode was only 30% done. And I don't believe that that was the intent. I believe it was more along the lines of, this is 30% of what we had envisioned. If we'd had more time, and to me that's crazy because it almost makes me sad. It's like this was already so incredible. Imagine if it had like that 70% more.
Breathing
just like the combination of like time, energy, pay behind it, fair working hours. Like, I hope that they can be proud of what they put out, because I do really think that it's like, we've said this, it seems like almost every episode seems to top itself. What blows my mind is and it may just be my ignorance with like the process of animating a show like this, but I just don't understand how something can get announced like 2 years ago and only get worked on the week before. And that is not the fault of the animators in any way, shape, or form. That is like probably the schedule and the fact that like these are probably the same people that were working on Chainsaw Man and Attack on Titan and gave us like really incredible shows. But like, in theory, it's like maybe you need to hire some more hands or some more help, and or make a more realistic production timeline so that these people can share work that they are like really extraordinarily proud of, that they feel is finished, because ultimately that's what matters. As much as I liked it and as much as I think it's absolutely incredible, and I hope that they can be proud of it. I think that they're frustrated, of course they are, by their circumstances, and they feel like they know that they have a different sort of potential if those circumstances are correct. So no matter how I feel about it, how they feel about it is really what matters. And if they feel like they're not proud of it because the circumstances were shit, then that really sucks. That's like, I don't know. It's just like really a shame, but I personally really enjoyed watching it. Like I shared before, I was like, I don't know how these animators are going to do like this last episode of Attack on Titan. I don't know how they're going to do this fight with Mahoraga. You'll notice it's animators from the same studio that handled both of these like literally larger than life scenes, and I think that they both are like absolutely incredible. The whole fight is just like absolutely insane. Watching the movement of like Sukuna and Mahoraga, in particular the scene where Mahoraga is walking through the Malevolent Shrine, and it's like several of, and he's like disintegrating and reforming and disintegrating. My only thing is that I am excited eventually to get the Blu-ray copy so that I can see the undimmed version. Which again, completely understand why that would need to be done, not only for like animation's sake, but for anybody like with epileptic
photosensitivity.
Yeah, photosensitivity. Anybody that like needs that, like I because there's a lot going on in the movement here, and it all just looks absolutely incredible. It's just like, it's just on another level, and each episode continues to do that. I've heard that allegedly tomorrow's episode is supposed to be one where they personally feel like the quality has lessened a little bit. I'm going to be surprised if I genuinely notice it, but if I do, I hope it's because they are taking a stand. And that, you know, if they feel empowered to do so, I just hope that they know that they have like almost the entire rest of the anime watching world behind them.
Yep.
I want to say, kind of echoing what you both have said, but if this is kind of their 30% envisionment of flushing things out and such, I don't know how I'd be picking my jaw up off the floor, because I was already stunned at this fight. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, this does not look like an anime anymore. This looks like a movie. I am so glad that I get the opportunity to watch such amazing work in such what I would call the golden age of animation, because we are getting banger after banger of solid artwork. And that's something that I think a lot of people in mainstream are realizing, is that animation is an art form. It is an amazing art form that takes a lot of work to build your craft and get your reputation up in an industry that is very competitive. So again, I would just want to echo every animator at MAPPA that touched this episode. Thank you so much for making something beautiful. But calling to specific moments, I loved the moment where Sukuna had his hand up against Mahoraga and he had like red and black shots, like it was so cool. And this entire fight scene was just amazing. Kind of cool watching Mahoraga like push himself back on as the wheel was spinning. That was really cool. Just so many cool moments. It's honestly kind of hard to call out, but I just want to kind of call to something else. I think that something that's easily to get lost on us or easy to forget is that we're no longer in Shibuya Station, and the casualties have started to rack up immensely. And who's behind all this? Sukuna. But whose body is it?
Yeah, this is where things get a little rough. I'm going to talk about the opening for a moment, because we didn't see it in this episode. You know, like the opening animation sequence with specials. It's interesting because like one of the shots in the opening that stands out the most to me is Yuji standing in front of, it looks like a red wall, and it's not something that we'd necessarily be super familiar with in the Western world, and we see him like kind of holding his head and like collapsing. And what those are, I'd have to look up the word again because I'm just thinking of this in this moment, but essentially it's a wall of graves. It's like it's more common in Japan to cremate remains of people. Also in Shibuya, there just probably wouldn't be much, so there might not even be anything in there as much as like just names. But those are supposed to be, I've heard, the graves of like all the people that died because of Sukuna, essentially. And that is like such a heavy weight to bear and to carry. And a lot of people have probably died. We don't, and the thing is, like, the show, like, we haven't even seen them, really. Like, the poor bystanders, like, we haven't really seen them since Gojo was, like, down in the basement. We see, like, a brief shot, I think. I can't remember if it was this episode or the one with Jogo. I think it was this one. We see a very brief shot of some people down in the train station again, and they're, like, looking, and then I think it is this one, because he has to offer, like, the way out of Malevolent Shrine. But it's like between the fight with him and Jogo, which like literally melted buildings, like rose that like nobody normal was surviving that, and then immediately after, here you have this fight with Mahoraga, who is like, Sukuna didn't really have to try that hard with Jogo, but he was like playing, I think, more so. I think he's actually having to try here a little bit, because Mahoraga's not necessarily like a sentient thing. It's like
it was like the reincarnation of Toji.
Kind of. It's like a killing machine. Like, it's like it's not human nor animal nor spirit exactly. It's like Mahoraga is really frightening and interesting, and I believe the nickname, or like the extension of the name, was like the Divine General Mahoraga. And so it's like a protector, but protector of what exactly? Because Megami's not exactly doing so well, but that's probably because he wasn't strong enough to earn Mahoraga's respect quite yet. So the fact that Sukuna has to actually really try against this means like there's got to be so many casualties as a result of, like, this battle is crazy, and I actually don't even think we're going to get to the civilian casualties for a minute here, but I know that they have got to be high and climbing.
I think it's interesting, and Emily, you're right, they did show some civilians in the like station. I think it's interesting that they focused on the girl, like there were two girls, and they were like, they noticed things were shaking, they noticed things were exploding, whatever, and one of them's like, I'm worried, and someone else was like, don't worry, remember, the guy with the megaphone will keep us safe. The guy with the megaphone was Yuji. And right now, Sukuna is creating all of this carnage and killing all these people, and then it shows him killing those two girls along with everyone there. And he's in Yuji's body. And I think this is something that it's making me more interested in Yuji's character as we start to truly see kind of this boy who is very sunshine. He's very kind. He's very Tanjiro-esque, right? And his power comes from literally like a demon inside of him, essentially, which is where it kind of like veers off from like him being similar to Tanjiro, right? Because Tanjiro doesn't have this demon inside of him. He's fighting the demon outside, right? And to see Sukuna just, all he's doing is fighting Mahoraga. Like, he's not really trying, he's not like actively targeting these people. He just doesn't care that people are dying around him. I think we see them like jump into this building at some point, and there's people like seeking shelter in there, and through his like cutting technique and everything, they all just are dead, like, because the two of them are fighting, and he doesn't care that there's all these casualties around him. And Yuji is like the exact opposite of that. He's always, no matter what he does, he's paying attention to those around him. So it's like there's this dark irony around this, because Yuji, if he really truly had control, would be keeping these casualties from happening, but Sukuna is just wreaking havoc, and he doesn't care. He's also enjoying it. I think he, in the back of his mind, is liking doing this. He likes the fact that like there's just all these casualties around him, all these civilians that are just killed because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, you know? And that's really, really sad. And I'll reserve, some of my thoughts on the reaction to all this, because we're going to talk about that, I'm sure, in a moment here. But the fact that, again, like to loop back to what I said at the beginning, the fact that they called to these two girls and they were like, no, it's okay, we'll be fine, because the guy with the megaphone is protecting us, when in fact it's kind of the guy with the megaphone that's wreaking havoc and that's killing all of them. It's just he's not in control. Is just, what is that going to do to Yuji? I think this is the first time that as Sukuna takes over his body, we truly see just genocide. That's he's murdering at a very, very high level here, and Yuji never wants that. He's the kind of kid that like struggles to kill even, the cursed spirits because he sees the human in them. So it's tough. It's tough to watch, but it still is just a gorgeous scene to watch as well.
I mean, besides like the rumbling in anime, I feel like there are very few other scenes that kind of compare to this. Maybe the most recent season of My Hero, where what's his face, Tomoda Shigaraki. Oh, okay, I kind of snapped there.
Okay, all right.
But when he put his fifth finger down and just kind of like let loose on the entire city, there's not really a scene in anime that I can think of where there's just like this much mass destruction besides those two. So I think really it's an interesting kind of way that like he just literally blows the entire place up. And it is wild to think that like he's like at the very beginning of the fight, he threw popcorn and it was like a bomb. Like that's the power level we're working at now. It feels like we've jumped so far, and realistically it looks so desperate for the heroes right now, because without Gojo, who in their right mind is even going to try to stand up to Sukuna? Like there's no. But nonetheless, kind of like Emily said, it seems like Sukuna is amping the pace up and starting to try against Mahoraga a little bit more. Now, she did talk about the pact on opening his domain expansion, so let's talk about that a little bit. And he's really laying it on thick here. So he is just going in for a little bit. He's going in to allow people to escape his domain expansion by giving them the option to escape, but it increases his hit radius to 200 meters. Tell me what you think of the way this final scene was painted for the fight and kind of these last couple moments and exchanges.
I think it's actually really interesting that this is like the condition for Sukuna. It seems like gentle to offer people he just doesn't strike me as like the type of character that cares about the fallout. So maybe this was a condition that was like forced upon him. We don't know too much about how anything like Malevolent Shrine was fully developed at this point. And he's like a man of legend. So like who knows if we ever will, or if it even super matters, because it just is what it is at this point. But anyone not in their right mind would probably want to take this chance to escape. And I imagine that most of them probably try to if they're still alive. Granted, the bodies have already piled at this point, so the point may be a little bit moot. But it's also interesting that his radius is only supposed to be like, I believe, 140 meters. And that's because that's like where Megami is. And he's like, I need to make sure that Megami's okay. And he's interested in Megami, presumably because of Mahoraga. We can talk more about that later. It's really interesting. But, my initial takeaways are that like he obviously doesn't want to be stuck in Yuji's body forever. Of course he wouldn't want to, and he's like insinuated that as well to Urame. Like, I'm not going to be in here much longer. Just wait. But he knows that if he is on his own, he probably is going to need like a lot of might of the Jujutsu world behind him. And Mahoraga would probably be a really great jewel in his crown based on how this fight is going. He's having to try. But like, imagine if he had Mahoraga on his side, that would be very, 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 very bad. I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. But the quality, again, of the animation of Malevolent Kitchen.
Is that what the original subtitle said?
I don't have they changed it because
it said it the first time I watched it, and then it said shrine the second time. I was so confused.
I think it was like a mistranslation. I wasn't sure. I was like, oh, like that's interesting. Like he's like let him cook, I guess.
The amount of memes I saw with him like holding
like Gordon Ramsay, Malevolent Kitchen. I kind of love it. Wish they would have just committed to it, but no. But like the movement of the Malevolent Shrine, and we know that he has like the cleave technique, and like the guaranteed hits are cleave and dismantle. and he's like guaranteed a hit. The fact that Mahoraga is like walking through this and clearly is taking damage, but still is kind of just like walking through as a boss. That's the moment that I mentioned before, and it's the moment I'm going to mention again because it is so frightening on both ends. I'm like, I would not want, obviously, to be walking through that, but also like, oh my god, like I would almost not want to be Sukuna either because Mahoraga is just still like charging straight towards him through this. And it just goes to show that is the power that could have gone up against Gojo's limitless technique. And we're seeing, I don't know if we're seeing Sukuna go all out, but we're seeing him be more serious than he's probably ever been in any of the fights that we've seen him in so far. This is a powerful thing. It's scary. It's animated really, really well. And I think like the chaos and the fluidity of it was captured in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, I think this is when they showed those two girls, if I'm remembering correctly, because I'm fairly certain they were inside his domain, which was, of course, that guaranteed hit where they said one of them was for people with with Jujutsu sorcery, and others were for normal people. So, like, either way, if you were a sorcerer or non-sorcerer, you were gonna, like, it was a guaranteed hit inside that domain. And so we saw even more carnage at this point, like, and essentially, you know, it looked as if an atomic bomb went off, like, in the middle of Tokyo. And except for the fact that people who were not within that radius were watching from afar and were fine and just wondering what was going on. So this was really interesting, and Mahoraga like held his own for a while. Obviously, you know, it eventually turned into him finishing him off before he essentially was done. And I don't know if he allowed Yuji to take over or if it was like, all right, my time is up. Like, this is all I could do. But it was just a really, really incredible scene in a way where it was like, wow, we already just saw so many people get taken out because of the fight. And now, like, in his domain, which he, of course, very specifically set it up where Megumi wouldn't be a part of it, but everyone inside, done. And I'm sitting here wondering, like, were there any other characters inside this at this point that, like, I need to know about? Because I feel like we haven't checked in on a few people in a while that, are they alive? Don't know. We did see, of course, Nanmi is alive, so you know there's he's just kind of like half burned, but it was a really interesting domain expansion. I think they also said something about the terms of this domain expansion, where usually when a sorcerer uses their domain expansion, they like essentially create their own little space, but he didn't. It was just there, and it was like a painter using or painting with no canvas. So I thought that was an interesting way to explain it as well. So, God, it was beautifully done scene. Again, props to our animators for doing that with the situation that they were under, but just even more people being killed was...
no fun.
Yeah.
I think this just kind of illustrates a point I've made, and I want to make it again. This is the man that Gojo sat on top of in the beginning of season 1, and look at what he is doing. And look at where Gojo is now.
Well, he said, like, he was like, Megumi summoned Mahoraga. He was like, if you had been this strong when we first met, you probably could have taken me down, which was insane for him to say. This is Sukuna. Like, the only person we've seen beat him is Gojo. And Gojo's like this otherworldly, like, power.
What a show. What a show. All right. Well, let's go ahead and go for those favorite moments. I'm going to start off with mine. Mine was the moment where Sukuna shot his fire arrow to finish off Mahoraga. I thought that was the most beautiful moment of the episode, and I really liked the fire arrows. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3, so anything D&D related has really been getting me lately, so love to see it.
My favorite, we didn't talk about yet. I have to say, my favorite moment was when Haruta died. I could not deal with that guy.
Fuck that clown.
When Sukuna was like, be gone, like, just leave, and he was like, I made it, I did it, I somehow survived, and then his face freaking just fell off. I was like, yes, most satisfying death this season yet. I hated that guy. I'm so glad he's dead. Also, this isn't really my favorite moment, but I have to call out the end when Yuji just had a complete breakdown when he noticed all the carnage, when he like took over and stuff. This might be a hot take, but I kind of liked the way they brought in specials. I wish they'd brought it in maybe just like a few seconds later, because I felt like it kind of overshadowed the amazing voice acting that was happening. But I liked that specials played right then. I thought it was an interesting kind of little like, okay, like this is getting serious. I don't know. I didn't hate it as much as the internet did. I'll just say that.
No, I'll chime in. I loved it personally, like, and I've seen so many memes about it at this point, but I think that might be my favorite moment actually because of the way it was done. First, I feel like I have to call out the difference obviously between the song specials and the alternative ending song. I'm forgetting what the name of the ending that we've seen otherwise, but there's something about like the usual ending song that evokes like such a sense of like calm but also like melancholy, if that makes sense. Like it almost makes me miss something that I feel like I don't know that I actually experienced. It feels like that song feels like the last day of summer or something. Like I don't know if that makes sense, but specials is an entirely different move. And so like Yuji having this breakdown in this moment and then specials being the song that closes it out, like we're not seeing the animated sequence that usually goes with it. It's like overlaying obviously this moment of like immense grief. I thought it was a really, really bold and like very interesting and fun choice because what we saw moments before is Sukuna just like dissolving and being like, and I consider specials to be from the perspective of like the villains of the show. And so like from the perspective then of Sukuna, and he's taunting him. He's like, you want to do good? You're not really in charge.
Yeah.
You're not the main character.
But let's see what you just did.
Yeah. What like you just did. Or like you think you have power? I could do this anytime kind of thing. But I'm doing it with your hands. It's like taunting him. So I think it was very intentionally chosen, and I didn't think it was like funny, I guess. I thought it was really well done, but to each their own. I think that probably is my favorite moment because it was really unexpected for me, and I thought it evoked for me the emotion that I feel that they were intending. I didn't think it was funny or like out of place personally. Second quick shout out to Mahoraga. Also finally getting animated. I've been waiting on that forever. I think that it really, really did justice to the manga. And I'm going to shout out also like something just quick about him that we didn't mention yet is like the creepy knob that he has on his back and the sound of that and how that was animated and knowing that it's like, oh, he's so horrifying because he can adapt to anything. And the only way to beat him is to hit him with like a 1-2 punch that's like two completely different things because he's adapted to not only the exact thing that you said, but any variations of it. He's horrifying. So the fact that like this new entity has finally been introduced was really, really exciting. So this was just another killer episode all around.
Amazing. Amazing. Again, thank you to the animators at MAPPA for making our lives amazing with this episode of JJK. Arigato gozaimasu. I am learning Japanese. It's day 48. All right. Let's hop into our Shibuya secret, shall we? Now, this is a Buddhist fact about the freaky freak we met this week. Mahoraga is inspired by Buddhism, as we've kind of mentioned throughout the show. The Mahoraga are one of the 8 classes of deities that are said to protect the Dharma. Question marks Megumi? Probably not, though, let's be real. They are described as huge subterranean serpents who lie on their sides and rotate the earth, which occasionally cause earthquakes. Fun fact. It's always really interesting how other cultures, things like that, describe natural phenomena. Tsunamis were described as like Triton slamming his trident against the sea floor and causing ruptures and stuff. Always very interesting to hear about other cultures explaining natural phenomena. All right. Well, that's all we have for today's show. Folks, we hope you enjoy it and that you'll come back next week. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and bell icon on YouTube. Go ahead and hit that download button if you're on Spotify and give us that 5-star rating. Of course, don't forget, always use that question feature. Let us know how we can improve for those future episodes. Give us a follow on TikTok and Instagram at Hashira Half Hour. And on X, or aka Twitter, formerly, we are at Hashira Half. So, until next week, date kimi. Yo aimo.
Yo aimo.
With this treasure I summon Yoimo.
That